Well, hello and welcome to the second instalment of our first Tivian Masterclass. For once the sun is shining here in London, I hope the same is true for you wherever you are. We had an excellent session last week and are looking to provide more of the same today. As you all know, I'm Jay Hartley, the UK Customer Success Manager, and I will begin walking through a few slides to introduce today's topic. I'll then hand over to my excellent colleague Kartik to do the clever bit, so I'll let him introduce himself now.
Hiya, I'm Kartik. I'm an IC at Tivian.
So let's look at the agenda. As a reminder, this masterclass is made up of 4 webinars where we will show you how to configure everything you need to collect feedback through our guides and then present that data in dashboards. Last week, we started with portals, and this week we're going to be looking at the guides. We've got a number of guide types which we will provide an overview of today. However, this session will primarily focus on the US guide type, which is the one most suited to ad hoc EX or CX feedback programs. Then next week we're going to look at how you present data captured by feedback from the guides in our Tivian dashboard product. And the final session will look at the custom dashboards that our BI team can deliver. So before setting off on the guides, I wanted to provide a brief recap of each area of the masterclass. Portals, guides, and Tivian dashboards represent our optimum self-service solution for gathering feedback and reporting back to the relevant managers. They're a seamless set of products within the EFS platform, and they can be made available to administrators for creation and then released to business users for everyday use. So last week we looked at portals, and just as a reminder, they're the inbuilt website that hosts the guides, dashboards, and other supporting content. Today we're looking at guides, and these are effectively a set of workflows that can be configured to send ready-made surveys to groups or participants, and also enable you to begin action planning. They're set up by an administrator, but then they can be made available to managers or other non-EFS users to make use of. You do not need an admin access login in order to launch, view, or report on guides. We're going to look at the guide types in a moment, but it's fair to say they cover many of the areas you could possibly want to collect feedback on. With regards to our dashboards, we're looking at 2 separate approaches within this masterclass. The first is looking at our standardized set of MySite dashboards, the Tivian dashboards, and they're going to be linked to your guides. So we'll look at how we can configure those next week. And then in the final session, we're going to look at custom dashboards, which our BI team can bring to you. So in a moment, I'm going to hand over to Kartik, and he's going to take us through the process of creating an US guide. However, before I do that, I want to briefly summarize the 4 available guide types and the typical use cases we see for these. First of all, we've got our Me guide. This is a very popular guide that provides an end-to-end process for leaders, and they can kickstart their own leadership development programs, whether that be a 180 or a 360. We've then got the US guide, and this has got a very wide scope as far as use cases are concerned. And you can set up predefined surveys, link them to the guide, and begin gathering feedback. The way it works is you can also import people into the guide and add them through the interface, or indeed create an anonymous process which uses shareable links and QR codes, which managers can send out to their teams or can be distributed to customers. We've then got ideation, and this allows for teams to collaborate on action planning or idea generation. The way it works is people are invited to provide some input. They submit their ideas on what you might want to work on, whether that be action planning, so it might be off the back of an engagement survey, or ideas for a new product. They can all then vote on what they think are the best ones. And again, the nice thing about this is, especially with the remote working we've got on you know, everybody's working through remote working at the moment, so it means that you can actually connect with your colleagues in a very easy to use format. And the final one is a topic guide. And this one is one to provide end users with the ability to run feedback programs on topics of their choice. And again, it's linked to a predefined survey, which is similar to the US guide, but then the end user can insert a topic, which then gets added as a wildcard into the question set for feedback. I'm now going to hand over to Kartik, and he's going to take us through the technical stuff with regards to the US guide.
Hello everyone. So what I'm going to show you is how to set up a guide, show some of the configurable elements of the guide, and show you some of the other elements that you'll need to have ready for the guide. Last week you went through the portals, so we've already completed that step, but I will very briefly show you just again where you find and link the guides. So just switching over now. So last week, when you went through the portals, you would have created your portal, and I believe you created the page with the guides and the guides module. And this is where, by adding the guides module, you can ensure that in your portal, any available guides for that user will show. So to actually set up a guide, you come to the guides option on the left-hand bar. Try that again. I think I've just been re-logged in. Here we go. And as Jay mentioned, there are 4 types of guides. So if you click on the new guide option, the available guides will show up. The Me guide, the Us guide, the Idea guide, and the Topic guide. All of them have their little explanations just to remind you of what the purpose is and what might be the most suitable guide to show. Today I am going to set up an US guide. However, I just want to show you before I do that actually a lot of the configurable elements of the guides are very similar across all of the guides. So I'm just going to show you, you can see now a topic guide, and you can see these tabs across the top. And this is a guide that hasn't been configured, so you can see sort of the warning red signs. A couple of really important elements, because this portal is in dual languages, so it's in German and English, you can actually configure both languages in the guide, so that if you come in with English as a language, you'll see the English introduction, and if you come in with German as the language, you'll see the German introduction. Only when the guide is completely set up will the publish switch turn on. I'll just show you here with my job satisfaction guide, which I'll go through in a bit. This is currently on, and you can toggle it on and off to show the guide in the portal. Just going to show you the other 2 styles of guide. So here's Idea, and again you can see very similar elements across the top. And then the Me guide as well, which, as Jay mentioned, is our most popular one and has a few more configurable elements. So looking at our US guide, I'm just going to take you through each of the configurable elements and where they go off to in EFS sometimes, and just explain a piece about each bit. So this is literally the bit that you'll see as you log into the portal, so where all your guides, all available guides are listed. So often we have a nice little logo or image against the guide, so depending on what the guide topic is. The guide title, in this case, we're going to call it Job Satisfaction, and just an explanation of what the guide's about. Now, what you've got to remember with the guide is that the portal might be accessed by a manager who's not very familiar with EFS, but there's a company-wide initiative to say do a survey on job satisfaction. So this is where they'll gain most of their information about what's going on with the guide outside of any communications that your company or your EFS administrators or the department may have sent out. You then have additional information on the guide. It's just in this example, I've used quite a simple walkthrough. So what steps are you actually going to go through, and an image just around that matches the guide itself. This is normally blank when you set up a guide. So, however, we do have some sort of standard options and some standard text that we can share to help you set a guide up. We then have the categories, And these may be familiar to you depending on your knowledge of EFS. And what I'm just going to do now is show you where you can set up or manage your categories. So if you click on the, I'll just do that again just in case you didn't see it. If you click on the little arrow square button just at the top here, it will take you off directly to EFS categories. And that's within the library area, which can also be found via the systems cog up here. And here you can see, because this is a portal that we do a few demos with, we set up quite a few different categories. Within the actual guide setup, you have the option to turn 1 or 2 on, or 1 or 2 off, depending on what you're doing. Within the US guide, I haven't used categories much with my clients. However, in something like the ideation guide, you often see clients use, and a couple of my clients do, use categories where they're getting feedback on a specific topic company-wide, and when they want to report, they want to be able to see actually what was that topic sat under, or if it's a focus area, for example. So depending on some of the questions they've asked through one of their surveys, if it's a focused area, they may want to say, you know, you really should have a guide, or you should have created some ideas around, let's just say, health and well-being or innovation. And then I'm going to move on to the next bit, which is where the EFS magic happens. So this is the questionnaire. Hopefully, again, this looks very familiar. And again, it's got a lovely little shortcut that you can click through here. And this is the questionnaire that we've linked to. Now, I've already created this questionnaire, but there is something that's really important at this point that I want to show you, which is for a guide, you must come to project properties and to template configuration and set the guide. So normally this is blank and you just click guides. The reason for this is that the guide and the portal start in our panel area, or take data, sorry, from our panel area. And what we're doing here is pushing data into a survey. And to ensure that, say, for example, the participant names or the employee names and the employee manager comes across, so you can see that in the data and you can use it in your wildcards, in your email templates, you need to set that up here. You can see I've very deliberately left it blank, so I can show you a couple of the things that you may want to do. So I'm going to start with a panelist here, and you can see I just clicked add panelist variable, and then hopefully, if this works, scroll down, and we're just looking for name, and we click add, and we'll do that again, and we'll click, there it is, first name, add. The reason for this is now this variable here that's been generated can be used either in your surveys or in your emails as a wildcard by putting the hashes either side of them. There's a cardinal sin here, which I often fall into the trap of, is forgetting to hit the save button. So always make sure after each step you've hit the save button. If you don't, obviously the configuration won't be saved, and then when you go to look for those variables or try to set them up, they won't be pushed through to the survey. I'm just going to do the same again for the manager. So again, it's exactly the same steps. And sorry, where you see I'm jumping, I'm just using the U as a way to jump down the drop down much quicker. So just clicking U on my keyboard. Right, there we go, we've added those. I'm going to click save again. Now, there's a really cool feature in guides, which is called context variables. I'm not going to go into them in much detail today because they do take a bit of time to explain and to demo. However, what you can do is you can have a base set of questions within the guide, say 5 questions that everyone must be asked, and then you can have 5 questions that are actually optional and that can be turned on and off, depending on who the manager is and how appropriate they are to ask for your team. So you can find all of the information on how to do this in our how-to guides, but for today's demo and in the interest of time, we're just going to explain them. The next bit you can see I've already added, which is a question preview, and this will make a bit more sense when I take you into the guide. But a nice feature of the guide is, again, if we think about it, the manager launching the guide may be aware of what they need to do, but may have not seen the questions or may just want to refresh themselves. So within the guide setup, you can go through the preview and see those. And then, as always, just make sure you click save once you've done these bits. So we go back through here, and as I said, the cardinal sin, because I clicked on a couple of categories. It's saying to me the edits I've made haven't been saved, so I'm just going to click save here again. The next bit is all around how you invite people, and here is the invitation element, and it's separated out from the other emails purely because we have a nice little feature here again to demo the email to someone setting up the guide. Again, the context here is you may have generated the email template and the person launching the guide may have never seen the email template. So actually they will see the email template here as a good refresher and a reminder. And there's another bit which you may see the hashtag personal manager message, which we'll see in the guide setup shortly. So you've got three options here, which is invite by email, invite by link, or do both. In this demo, I'm just going to do by email, but as Jay's mentioned already, we can also do via voucher code. Again, the lovely little feature where you have a drop down to see which email templates are available to you, but you can also shoot off to the email template that you've selected. And here you can see I've configured my email template. You can check it's the right one, check if you want to make any edits. You've also got you can have a separate one for voucher codes, which again you can see has the same principle. Select the email templates that are available, and then if you want to go off to EFS and look, you click there again. So here in the email preview text, what I've actually done is, if I go back to my mail template, I've actually taken the text out of the email template and just popped it in here as a demo, including the hashtags, so the manager can see where the name will appear, where the personal message will appear, and where the link will appear. And then down at the bottom, we've got a couple of options here. You can set a minimum number of participants, and you can have this on and off. Now, this is important. Again, you'll see when I start walking through the guide. You can choose whether your manager participates or not. We've got a job satisfaction survey here. As part of that, you probably wouldn't want the manager to participate in their team's job satisfaction survey because they would actually participate in the one that their manager sends them. For the demo, so I get the invite, I've left it on, but in this example, you would have it off. There are other surveys where it may be appropriate for the manager to respond. And we also have allow invitation of people by email address only, which has a lovely little explainer here, which if I hover over it, shows you when the option is active, external participants that are not panelists can be invited by their email address. We currently have this set as off. Then we have the other email settings. As per surveys, we have the option of adding a reminder email, and we actually have another option which is called the last call reminder email. I'll come on to that in a little bit of time, but you can have the same email template as the reminder, or you can have a different email template that sort of highlights that this is the last opportunity you have to complete the survey. They all have little eyes above them as well. And then the last one is the results mail template, which although I've set one up, as we know, we're going to be talking results in the next one with dashboards, so I will leave that for now. You then have the opportunity here to set up how you link to your results. You've got a couple of configurable options of how in the guide status when the results button shows. And again, depending on the type of guide and process you have, you may want this on straight away once the guide's set up, or you may actually want to wait until everyone's had the opportunity to provide their feedback and then show the results. You can also set who receives the email to say, actually, the guide results are available. And again, depending on your setup, you may want to send this to all participants, or you may only want to send it to the manager. The bit here where it says dashboard configuration, that will be covered when we go through the dashboards in the next webinar. And the final one, which I guess in some ways is the most crucial one around the guides, is the settings. So we have the opportunity here to set how long the guide will take, will be active for. Guides are an exact days. So what I mean by that is, if you were to set it today, to start today at 3 o'clock, that means in 14 days time at 3 o'clock, the guide will end. So just always bear that in mind. There are wildcards that you can show the time. However, a few clients have found that they didn't think that always offered them the benefit that they were looking for. So it really varies. Again, you can show that in your email templates. You can show it elsewhere too. This little bit of text here is that, well, or the text, I should say the time of the text here is configurable, and you'll see in a second again when I set up the guide where that shows through the process. On the last page, I mentioned the guide initiator, I mentioned the last call email. The last call email becomes active when the guide initiator can extend the process once. So, for example, you've had your job satisfaction survey out for 13 days now. You know it ends tomorrow, and you've only had 2 responses out of a team of 10. You have the opportunity, if the guide initiator can extend the guide for a set number of days that you choose, and send one last call email at that point. This option is useful in certain contexts of guides. In this particular one, we'd say you probably wouldn't use it, but where you've got a me guide and you're doing a leadership 360 and you've got a certain number of feedbacks that must be provided to ensure that you actually get your report, that's the sort of context that you would probably have this enabled. You've got a couple of options here as well where you can restrict who can actually see the guides. So I'm just going to turn them on just to show you. So I've turned on portals role users, and here you can see the drop downs active, and any portals role users with any of these that I've selected will be able to see the guide. If you don't have that in your portal role user access, you would not be able to see the guide. The other one is you can actually restrict it using panel groups, which again I think was covered last week when you covered the portals because you restricted access. But just to show you again, I can turn it on. And then actually here we've got all of the groups that exist within the panel. Obviously, if you've already restricted the portal, if you then had a group that can't see the portal, they wouldn't even be able to get to the point of the guide. So I'm just going to turn that off. The last option in the basic settings is allowing to delete the guide. Now, when I'm testing with clients, we always leave this option on, because you create a lot of guides, you don't really want them. Once it's out in the population, in the employee sphere or the manager sphere, you may want to turn this off, because actually if you don't turn it off and someone accidentally deletes a guide, recovering a guide and linking that back to an individual user is very difficult. It requires a database level intervention. So you really want someone to avoid deleting a guide. It will be quite painful for everyone involved. The last bit here, as it clearly says, is the reminders. So you can set when the reminders go out. Depending on your guide type, you may want to vary this. I'm going to make this 7 in our guide because that's normally what we use. I'm going to click save just so I don't lose that. And we do also have an option here to send reminder mails to all participants. This is an option that's used by some of our colleagues across the globe, where they want to make sure people feel confident in the confidentiality of the process, and therefore they send the reminder email to everyone, even if they've completed the guide or the survey. And they normally have a little bit of text in the reminder which says, if you've already completed this survey, thank you very much for doing so. So that is the setup. I'm now going to move on to actually showing you the guide itself. Just one thing to bear in mind: once you've changed settings, they will only show when you then start a new guide. So if, for example, you decided to change the guide initiator process and turn it on because actually people's guides weren't completed successfully, once you turn that on, that will only apply to any new guide launched. It will not apply to guides that are already active, and that's a really important point to remember. So now I'm going to go to my portal, which hopefully looks really familiar, and as you can see, we've got our job satisfaction guide that we've set up. You can see here we've got a little details button and a start button as well. I'm just going to click on the details button, and it shows us the information about the guide. I'm going to click on start, and we're going to see the same information again. So you can see why you've got a little don't show this again sign here as well. So I think once you're familiar with the guide, you generally will go to start guide or view status, which you'll see shortly. But it is a useful thing to understand where that links off to. So I'm going to click next, and earlier on, hopefully you remember, I set the preview to preview all the questions, and this is how it shows. So you have by default, it doesn't show the questions, but all you have to do is click, and you can see all the questions that we're going to ask in our survey. This is also, it does have the little image as well, which indicates these questions are in a matrix format. And here is the little bit of text that I pointed out in the setup, which shows, and this obviously says how long we think it's going to take. The next bit, we're going to invite people. I'm going to invite a few of my colleagues. I just want to, before I move forward, I just want to highlight, I don't know if any of you saw it, but I can't move forward until I've invited the minimum number of participants that we had, which ours was 3. You can obviously configure that higher or lower, or you can actually have it off so that it only shows you only have to invite 1 person. What you've got to consider there is how does that link with your results? What anonymity levels have you set within your results, either your dashboard or other? Those numbers have to match. Otherwise, obviously, if you only invite 1 person and you can only see results if 3 people responded, you're not going to see results. So I'm just going to invite my colleagues now. So you can see there that we've got my 3 colleagues, and what it's done there is it searched the list to find them in the panel. If we had turned on the invite by email option, you could have also actually typed in an email here. So I'm just going to type a personal email, or start typing a personal email, but you can see it says no matches found. So I can't do that at the moment because that's the way we set it up. And then the last bit here is you get the opportunity here to name your group, which means next time you come in, if you want to send the same survey in 6 months' time to your colleagues, that group will already be set up. You will still have the option to adjust it, but for now, we're just going to create the group. We click next because we've invited our 3 people, and here is where you see the the email invite, as we saw in the preview. If I click add personal message, I can actually type in a personal message, and this will appear. So if I scroll up, this will appear here where we've got the You Personal Manager message wildcard. So demo, and then the last bit to send it is confirm and send. Just very quickly, you can see here that if I wanted to check and go back, I've got a link here to go back and have a look at the people I've invited. You can also press back here. So lo and behold, we're going to put out our guide into the real world. And now we get to the guide status page. You can see it's telling us when we started our guide, when the automatic reminder will go out, and when the guide will end, how many people I've invited, how many people have currently responded, and then you actually have the option to remind them all as well. So that's the point. I'm going to stop because our guide's now in the field, and hopefully in a couple of weeks' time, we'll have a lovely bit of feedback that can go into a dashboard.
Thanks, Kartik. So we're almost bang on time. It's time for questions, and I've got one that's come in here, and it's relating to that access rights, Kartik, and it's where do I set the portal roles in the system?
That's a good question. So within the portal, this is within our club portal here, we can see participants. So if we click on participants, you can actually see a couple of people are already in here, and you see the role here, just here. We have drop downs with the predefined categories where you can select 1 or actually 2 or all, depending on who should have access to what.
Thanks, Kartik. And then another one just around emails. So are all emails available, or do you have to have a specific setting for them?
You do have to have a specific setting. That's actually a really great question. So you'll see here, here's my email list, and the module is actually project. So there's a couple of different ways you can do it. You can actually, when you click new draft, you actually, as you open up, you see new draft projects or new draft portals. In this instance, in guides, they have to be for projects. There are specific ones for portals as well. As you can see, my colleagues have made a few different ones here for portals as well.
Beautiful. Thanks, Kartik. Well, thanks everybody for joining us today. It was a great session, and we will be bringing you dashboards next week.